Good afternoon. We're back again. We're going to continue on our transportation folks here. So Patrick Keelty's here, and he's going to do a presentation on how not to create a vector-based map. So if I just commented that that's interesting because so far we've had everybody tell us how to do something, and Patrick's going to tell us, based on his experience, what you shouldn't do. So just a quick introduction. Patrick is an IT administrator for the Bureau of Data Management and Analytics, GIS division. He has over 20 years experience in GIS, which includes work at the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation and the United States Navy. Currently, Patrick supports the spatial infrastructure and architecture for PennDOT, PEMA, and DCED. His areas of focus include ArcGIS Enterprise, ArcGIS Online, and Microsoft Azure. Patrick, it's all yours.
Thank you. I got a lot. That better be good. All right. The first couple slides, I don't like a lot of text, so I'm just going to get them out of the way. I'm going to talk a little bit, but after that, it's going to be a little bit different. So first of all, I do work for the Office of Administration. I worked for PennDOT for most of my career, so I kind of initiated this project, but PennDOT and the Geographic Information Division, they do own it. So I got it started, but they're definitely taking it to the next step. So why this format? So when I decided to do it, I kind of wrote down a list of what I wanted to talk about, and I'm like, well, I did this, but that gave me a headache, and I did this, and I wanted to quit, and then I did this, and I was crying, and I'm like, so when I was done, I had these bullet points, and I had this outline, and it's all of stuff that people should know not to do to make their life a little bit easier. So that's how it came about. So I hope what I kind of share with you today kind of helps you avoid my mistakes. So really the next 20 minutes, I'm talking about a lot of my failures. So if I apply for any jobs with you guys, ignore the next 20 minutes, please. Just a real quick, what is a vector-based map? I'm going to put this in my disclaimer, which is the next few slides, but really what vector tile cache is instead of a raster-based map or raster tiles, which are just millions really for a base map of PNG images, these are tiles that actually contain the point, line, and polygon vectors, and they're dynamic. And really one of the things about vector is that we can actually edit it and style it after the fact. I just want to, vector tile caches, they can be used for a lot of stuff, but I mean, I just want to be honest, nobody uses it for anything really other than a base map. I know someone's going to say they do, but it's very infrequent. It's a really good base map format. Again, I'm not going to get too much into the technical stuff, and I'm not going to do any kind of real demos, but I just want to give you an idea of what our workflow is when we put together this vector base map. And we go from ArcPro, that's where we kind of gather the data and organize the data, and we convert that into a vector tile package that goes to AGOL or Portal. Then we can use the editor or JSON. And from there it's published, and now we have a base map out there. So I'm going to exit the presentation really quick. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm just going to show you. This is our vector base map. And if you're familiar with a lot of PennDOT applications, this might look very similar to you. And that's the whole point of it. And this can be used as a base map for a web application, for a web map to do some analysis, that kind of thing. So it's mostly all PennDOT data, the roads, the boundaries, but we do use some third-party data, like you can see the state parks and forests, and then data outside of the state as well. That's not PennDOT. But so if you're not familiar, this is really what I'm talking about of what I created for this process. Real quick, I'm going to get back into it. And again, I apologize for these really, I'm just going to go over these real quick. I hate reading text. Esri is deprecating a lot of the raster base maps, but PennDOT is still supporting it. We're going to have both of them exist at the same time, and if eventually we do have to get rid of the raster, the vector will be there to take its place. in terms of ArcGIS Online, just remember that these are hosted in AGOL or Portal. So there's a credit system for storage. So just, be careful. I have a slide real quick of some comparisons. They're much smaller than a raster, but they still do take up space. What's better? I was kind of naive. I just said vector because that's the way we're going. But if you want to have a fun night, grab a beer, type in what's better, raster or Basemap into a GIS message board, and boy, they are mean. I don't know what's better after reading all that stuff, but they are very passionate about it. So I'm just going to say we have both. You can use either one. Real quick kind of vocabulary too. I know it's vector tile cache and raster tile cache, but I'm just going to say vector Basemap and tile Basemap. And for the editor, it's the vector tile style editor. I'm just calling it the editor. So I apologize for the Esri teams that work on all of this stuff, but it's just a lot easier. And one thing I'm not going to talk about is data preparation. I have 20 minutes and I've already used the chunk. Data preparation is extremely important and it takes a lot of time and you have to be really careful. So I know we have some GID folks here who work on that. If you want to talk about that, reach out to me, reach out to GID. We can explain our process for that too, because it is a lot of work goes in to make sure those roads are properly kind of prepared before they make it. And lastly, some just kind of quick facts and history. Our first raster Basemap was 2014. Vector was 2021. I think I'm wrong on that 12 days. I think it's all closer to 20 days it takes our raster Basemap just to chunk and process. It is a lot of data, and it looks great, but it takes a long time. Vector takes about 2 hours from start to finish once the data is ready, which is really nice. Lastly, the raster Basemap footprint is about 70 gig. All the vectors about just over 300 meg, which is pretty small nowadays, and it makes it great for make it kind of portable or downloadable or used in like mobile applications. Okay, so that was kind of the admin stuff. So I'm going to get right into it, and this is really it's like a quick fire, what not to do. This is unscripted. This is kind of ad hoc. It's really like a therapy session. I'm going to show you my problem, and I'm going to talk about why it's my problem, and hopefully it's not your problem now after this. So, sorry about that. Okay, first, when you put together this data in ArcPro, add everything you can think of. Don't delete anything. If you think you might need it, add it. If you think you could use it in 5 years, add it. It doesn't matter. It's a lot easier to get rid of your data by turning it off, editing the JSON code, but it is very difficult to add things back. And this goes, I'll talk about this a little bit too. This goes for the data as well. Vector data might not be a real GIS spatial layer with attributes, but you can still use information that is contained within the vector. So you can use it for things like I said, labeling, filtering, kind of tricky ways, but or when you're preparing the data, you can do like field calculator and arcade and SQL and stuff like that. So if you just don't delete it. If it's already there, just leave it. And if you think you might need it, keep it. Just don't delete it. I wasted a lot of time. So like I said, we have our raster Basemap and it looks great. So my first thought was, hey, I'll just upload this into ArcPro and then publish it, and I have a vector Basemap, no problem. Well, ArcGIS Pro has this nice tool that called Analyze before you do something, and that causes so much anxiety because I got I think it was about 3,000 errors when I ran it the first time. So my lesson was, don't use a legacy product like an MXD thinking it's going to play nice with ArcPro or ArcGIS Online or Portal. You're probably going to have to start from the beginning. This is a big one, and I have a screenshot for this. I thought I could just style it. I had all the data. I had the existing raster Basemap. I'm like, oh, I'll just, kind of steal styles and I'll recreate it. And now I have this ArcPro project that looks just like ArcMap MXD, and I'll publish that. Don't do that. When you send it to AGOL, it renders it differently. So what happens is you got to start tweaking everything in the editor or with the JSON, and it's dumb. It was horrible, just a horrible experience. So my suggestion is make it ugly. Don't worry about anything. Don't worry about cartography. Don't worry about rules, because this is what you want to end up with. But what I publish is this. And I get into what you see on here in a little bit more detail, but this is our raw product that's out there. Okay, labeling. I had a full head of hair before labeling. This was this is labeling. You'll be there someday, some of you. So label everything, just like the data. If just label it. You might not need it. You might not care about it. You might never need it, but just label it. No problem. It's going to take forever to load up in Pro, but you don't really care. Because what kind of happens is it doesn't use exactly the same labeling engine as Maplex and Pro. So it does a lot of things a little bit different. So if you think it's going to be kind of a one-for-one from your Arc Pro to your vector map, you're wrong. So you're going to spend all that time worrying about it, or you might not turn the label on, that kind of stuff. And it's just easier to mess with it later. Turn it right off. If you don't like it, there's a switch, turn it right off. And again, some of our stuff we name 3 times. Some of our roads, we have shields. So we need our 2 or 3 digit shield labels. We have our street name, which is a concatenation of actually 2 fields. And then we have our 4-digit SR numbers. So I have one layer with 3 different labels on it. And if I don't use them, I don't use them. So that's a big one. And as you can see here, this is a screenshot of the vector tile editor. And these are the only options you have for labeling. If you're familiar with Maplex and Pro, you can customize label with weights and priorities and feature rankings and all sorts of crazy stuff. And this was great for our raster because we knew exactly where those labels would be and how they would look and how they would interact. But you're very limited in this, so just be warned on that. Oh, another one. Oh, this is bad. When you publish a vector map to AGOL, it only includes the fonts you used in that map. So to my surprise, the first time I tried to create a vector map, all I had was Arial. That was it. Because our first base map, that's all it had. So I just said, hey, Arial's fine. No, because once I got it in there, and I'm not a great cartographer, but so when I showed this to other people, they're like, well, this font should be a lighter font or italics, and this should be bold, all sorts of stuff. And what happens is, I just published this one really quick yesterday, just for kind of a display. I published a map with just one font, all labeled with to home. What is that? Oh, I don't know. Whatever. That's the font. And as you can see, when I try to change the font, that's all I have available. And I just really quickly added a couple more fonts to it. And as you can see, all those fonts showed up. So what we did is we label everything like I showed you before, and I picked a different font and different family for every single one. So counties, I would do in one font. Municipalities, a completely different font. Everything, and then I would add bold to it. I'd make it italics. So what happens is when you go into that vector tile editor, you have what we have now is over 100 fonts to select from rather than just one. And that took me forever to find out. So don't just add your data as a single like point, line, or polygon, because what happens, it's very similar to the fonts, is that you actually don't have a lot of options later on. So a couple things here is like our municipality layer. We have townships, we have cities, we have boroughs. We will show those differently on a map. And if I don't classify them beforehand, then I can't classify them within the map. But it's very similar to the other things I've been saying is I can classify everything with different symbologies and use those later on. And if I don't like them, I can turn them off. If I want things to look the same instead of breaking it down, I can just make them the same color, same thing like that. and this kind of goes along with it too, is that don't use simple symbology. Mix it up. Like one of the examples I have here is the outlines. If I don't use a dashed outline in my ArcGIS Pro map somewhere, then I won't have that option as a pattern in the editor. So kind of symbology and breaking the data down and labeling are all kind of in the same category, is that it's just do an obnoxious amount of variety so you can use all of that stuff later, because if you don't, you start from the beginning and you kind of learn your lesson that way. We spent so much time in our raster Basemap at the first few scales putting labels on our interstates, on our counties, on the other states, some of the bigger water bodies, and we had those annotations just perfect. I know some people in this room were involved in that, and they looked great. Well, like I said, when you hit that analyze button, you get so many errors on annotation because we have an entire file geodatabase of annotations. So we just had to give it up. And this goes back to one of my earlier ones of the labeling, is because we just labeled everything. So now we had that there and we could manipulate it and kind of recreate the best we could the use of our annotation in the raster Basemap. And I kind of sound like a broken record in a little bit of this, but we use some images, these PNGs, for our shields. And one of the things we learned is that if we just use kind of a standard size image, it didn't look good at certain scales. So we create a whole bunch of the same image, different sizes, from just a few pixels up to, I don't know, like 200 by 200. I mean, just way too big that you would need. But it gives you that option at any scale to use a variety of different images that you might need on your map. Don't publish duplicate layers. So we use kind of, for instance, one of the layers that we use is municipality boundary. We use at the base, at a lower level, we use it so we can put like cities, because we color those differently. But as you zoom in, we use the boundaries above it as kind of, because those will be above the road and above water, stuff like that. So we need two of them. So historically, we just had two different layers in the Arc Pro or Arc map file, and that's how we did it. You don't have to do that. Within the editor or JSON, you can just copy that layer, and it's a lot easier to do it that way than trying to keep track of extra layers in an Arc map or Arc Pro, because if you delete those or move those or change those, it will affect. Sometimes it just won't even work. And just another useful trick is don't style every layer at every size. If you look at our MXD and our Arc Pro raster Basemap, for instance, our road layer, we have that at every single layer from 4.6 million all the way down to the 1,000 level. So I think that's like 16 different road layers. The tile editor has some great functions where you can just change the zoom scale as or the size of like a road or something as you zoom in. So it's one layer, but the zoom by scale actually controls the style as you zoom in. And you can do more than just like the width of roads. You can do the colors, transparency, so you can get really creative with one layer, but how it's affected at each zoom level as you move in. So that was really, really powerful. So another one is, I'm somebody, when I copy a layer or when I create a new layer, it's bridges copy, bridges copy, bridges copy, two, bridges final, whatever. When you publish this and you want to edit the layers on the edit with the editor or the JSON, now you have to remember what each one of those is for. So I strongly recommend naming the layer kind of an alias. So you can see here, we have, I was talking about our municipality boundaries. We have the copy of municipality, and then we have the lower municipality boundary showing only cities. So we get really descriptive in that. This goes back, not only do you want to label everything, but you can't force labeling. You can do your best. but you're going to kind of have to live with a little bit of what Esri tells you you can do with the application. And one of the tricks we did is, and I think I have a screenshot here. This is the typical labeling of a interstate, and those shields, I don't know, there's just too many of them. But we couldn't figure out, labeling just wouldn't solve it. So what we did is we actually converted the road to points and just labeled the points along the road. So we actually had a little bit of control. So we couldn't do it with the labeling, but we could do it with a little bit of GIS magic to add labeling exactly where we want it by using points. Yeah, this drives me crazy too, but and I'll just show you what I'm talking about is, so when you're in an ArcPro or ArcMap, your layers, they're in the order of that they are in the table of contents. So whatever's up top, that's the topmost layer. Whatever's second, that's the second layer. And all the way at the bottom, that's your bottom layer. Makes sense to all of us who work with Map and Pro. JSON and the tile, they are drawing order. So you can see the first one on there is your background. And this is where you really have to, that's why you need kind of descriptive names, because if the first time you see like municipality boundary, oh, I'll just edit that one. Well, what you really meant to do was do the one below it or above it. So you really have to remember that it's the opposite order for ArcPro compared to your JSON and your tile editor. And that'll save you a lot of time. And again, this goes back to me trying to assume that I could just use ArcPro to publish it and I'm done. The combination of ArcMap or ArcPro, ArcGIS Online, the editor, and JSON is really, the combination really makes it easier for you to maintain and organize this. Don't overwrite your data. Once you overwrite your data, if you use a new ArcPro APRX, if you use a new file geodatabase, if you publish a new vector tile cache, if you publish a new JSON, they all have to be working together. If they don't, it's messed up, and then you have to figure out which one broke. So keep them all together. So what we do is we have our working file geodatabase, ArcPro document, and the JSON together. So if we publish it and we break it, we just go back to kind of a repo and it saves us, and then we can kind of fix what broke rather than trying to get what's broken to work again. And this is a personal preference, but you can publish your map directly from ArcPro and just say, there's my vector-based map. I like the idea of having the vector tile package and the JSON, like I just said, because if you have all of those, you kind of control the versioning of it, because it will break. You know, once you put the wrong thing in that JSON line, or once you move or delete a file, something that you weren't supposed to in the ArcPro, you end up with a broken vector-based map very quickly. Okay, hurry up for these last couple here, but don't create a brand new map every time. Don't say, you know, we have our base map now, maybe we want to create a light gray or dark gray eventually. Just use the editor and the JSON to tweak it. And then you always have one source, which would be the vector tile package. So when you upload that, all of your maps will change. So that's just an easy way to kind of update everything at the same time and keep it all synced. Yeah, this freezes all the time. I can't believe it. Like, it's 2023 and, you know, pay Esri a lot of money. Like, it crashes a lot. And this goes for all three. This is the JSON editor, the vector tile editor, and hey, Pro's getting better, but it still crashes. So you have to save a lot. And I'm going to just kind of finish with 1 through 19 could have been simply avoided if I would have just read the documentation. Most everything is in there in black and white. I did not read a thing. I mean, it was embarrassing. Like, there's like headings, like, you know, use multiple layers, you know, copy and paste, you know, label everything. All of that is in there. So, I mean, I'm not going to change. I'll just do the same thing next time. But for the rest of you, especially the students, read the documentation. Esri did a fantastic job with the vector tile cache that will kind of give you even more rules than I pointed out now that will make sure that when you publish this, you don't go through a lot of the headaches that I went through. I started talking faster at the end. I apologize. But that's it. In the presentation, I have some of the stuff I talked about, our base maps, and some links to the communities and the documentation and the blogs that are really good. So sorry about that. Out of breath.
Thank you, Patrick. We probably have time if anyone has a question while Joel gets set up for his presentation. Oh, you should have yelled at me harder before I was back there. Okay.
No, I just lost it. No, I have it. Oh, are your vector tile base maps and raster base maps available for offline use at PennDOT?
Jeff, well, the vector, we create our own mobile vector tile caches for that. But I think there's an option when you publish to allow it, and I actually have no idea if that's turned on or not. I can
Could
find
you
out for
please?
I think the raster one is. I believe the raster one is.
Okay. I'll get in touch with you guys if we need something. Also, too, when it comes to updating, you probably want to retain that REST URL. And I do know that when you want to update, you have to at least in my experience, I had to publish a new one and then kind of you have to use, I forget what the tool's called, but there's a tool that basically takes that data set and puts it into that content item ID or whatever. Is there a better way to update?
Is that the AGOL assistant?
No, not through AGOL Assistant.
Oh.
It's a tool. I mean, so you said because you can't overwrite vector tile layers.
Well, you can update the vector tile package.
So you just go into the content item and then update.
Same with the JSON file too. There's an update option that we select that
Gotcha.
and upload them both. And
Awesome.
that's again why I always have the three kind of source files that if it breaks, you can just put the original ones back. And
Excellent. Great. Thanks.
I think we have another question.
So when it comes to, and maybe it's a question for Esri, but did you ever find out why you need to make labels and styles in all kinds of varieties so that they show up when you publish? Did you ever ask the question?
No, I never asked. Okay. It was just kind of a lesson learned that, we published it and then we realized that we needed another layer somewhere or a duplicate somewhere. So, the first time we would go back and